I want to ask you a little bit about what happened over the last decade or so. Private banks such as yourselves, you have whisked away that market share from your public sector peers. They were saddled with some of their own problems. But this growth that has been seen within the private banking sector has been tremendous. I don't know what other word to use. Is this a sustainable sort of growth rate?
Definitely. And the reason I'm saying is the whole pie is growing. See, if the economy was stagnant and there was no job, there is no growth, then you talk about how do you gain market share. But the whole banking pie is growing because of the economic growth. Private sector banks have been at the forefront of making sure that the technology changes are incorporated on the digital platforms, mobile, net, etc., and products and service.
Yeah.
I think the market is large enough for almost everybody. And I think if you look at today, you have private sector banks, public sector banks, fintechs, as Rajiv talked about, who sort of take a certain level of this thing. And you have all kinds of financial services player. Now, all of them are growing because the whole base and pie is growing. Yes, it will be competitive, but the whole business is about customer acquisition, value proposition, service, giving them a great experience on your technology platforms. And those who are able to stitch all of this together will win, but even others will have a lot of opportunity. I think India is under-penetrated in financial services, and that is absolutely a fact. If you see over the next 10 years, I think you will see many corners of India being accessed, and banks will be at the center of it.
Thank you for calling this growth tremendous, but both our institutions are still relatively young, and more importantly, relatively small. I mean, Axis Bank, we have a 5% market share on deposits and a 6% market share on assets. So while, as Shanti said, the pie will grow, we would like to believe that private sector banks still are a relative. I mean, as a consolidated entity, we're close to 35% or so. But I think each of the entities are still relatively small in the larger scheme of things. So I do believe that private sector banks will continue to gain market share, and in that sense, individual private sector banks still are relatively small in the larger scheme of things. But I think more importantly, as we think of ourselves as a $5 trillion or $10 trillion economy, it is an absolute imperative that we have a healthy public sector system as well. And I think everything that the government has done over the last 5 years, we are beginning to see that play out. It's not just the private sector banks who have benefited, from this, turnaround in the banking system. Each of the public sector entities are also delivering record profits, which I think is all very, very healthy from an Indian economic perspective.
I just want to add one thing, and this is about the public. Look at the way they have reinvented themselves. If you look at the top few banks, they're all at the forefront of technology. They have made sure that they are, incorporating various different practices. They've all capitalized themselves, revitalized their balance sheets, and poised. So I think it's been a great run. And I think the banking sector needs all of these different kind of players for the opportunities that will emerge as we move towards a 5 trillion and a 10 trillion economy.
Okay, this was an engine that was closed for some time, the public sector banking system, right? But now you've got done all the repairs and it's back on the road. Do you feel, but then because of the size, because of the reach, they pose a greater competition to you than some of the other private banks that you're competing with already?
So I'll repeat what Rajiv said. If you look at the market share of most of the private sector banks, they're still small. So the ability to grow and leverage the opportunity is there, and it's tremendous. Okay. Second, today distribution actually is very different. Digital has made the world flat, and you can reach anybody, sitting anywhere through technology. So when you look at today, for example, savings accounts being open, you download an app, you open a savings account. In the good old days, you had to go reach and then open. So I think technology is making the reach and the distribution factor a very different strategy, right? It's no longer the only advantage. You have to stitch a whole proposition around it. And banks will find their own balance between physical and digital. So I'm very fond of saying banking was physical 10 years ago. In the last 5-6 years, it went phygital. Physical enabled by digital. Now we are moving to digital. Digital enabled by physical. So you will need the physical presence because banking is based on trust. But what will be the balance? What will be the ratio? Different banks will have different strategies.
The banking system is getting consolidated. If you look at credit cards, the big 4-5 banks dominate 70% of that, incremental deposits, incremental assets, and so on and so forth. So I think the consolidation phase has well and truly begun in Indian banking.
Yeah.
And you certainly need to stay relevant in that perspective. Gaining market share, all of us have to fight every day, to get that. Nobody's sitting to giving it away. It's my peers, private sector banks who are competition. The public sector banks are competition. We are in a technology super cycle. And so therefore we will see disruptions coming and hitting us from spaces that we did not even know existed.
Right.
And so therefore we've got to sort of watch out for some of those as well. Fintechs, neobanks, and some of banking could potentially get disaggregated as well. Where goods and where services will get unbundled, and therefore take away the more remunerative profit pools for us. And so therefore, but I must also say that I heard the same song in 2012, 13, 14 that every bank will die, fintechs will come and have us for lunch. But you still invited two veteran bankers here to inaugurate this. So we must be doing something quite all right. So it's not as if bankers are sitting back and ignoring everything that is happening around us. And I think there's been a tremendous transformation in banks. Banks historically, we never used to think about UI, UX and what color the screen should be, but we have design experts as full-time employees for us now. And so therefore that transformation as bankers has certainly happened, and we will continue to fight tooth and nail to ensure that we continue to stay relevant to consumers.